Be sure to hop on over to the Spiritual Broadcast Network. It's the go-to place for all things spiritual. You'll discover internet television shows that you won't find anywhere else. You can also choose from hundreds of hours of spiritual documentaries and movies. You'll enjoy on-demand and live internet television programming 24/7. Best of all, we add new dramas, comedies, talk, and reality shows and more on a daily basis. So why spend countless hours searching the web?
Have you introduced me, George?
Quickly find just what you want on the Spiritual Broadcast Network. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Afternoons with Ed show. Here's our host, Ed King.
Hi everybody. Well, it's a very pleasant day in lovely Sarasota. In 2 more days, I will have lived here for 25 years. I believe that's the longest I've ever lived in one particular place, in village, town, whatever, in my life. You know, I don't like to talk about politics or religion because people are entitled to their own opinion on these things. I live with a lady I have for 37 years. We were married 37 years last June, and she's going to cancel out my vote when we go to the polls. And so I try to stay as broad-minded as possible, but I get these scurrilous emails from people who intend on disseminating lies. And it reminds me of back when Kerry was running for president, and they got this jerk from Texas on there to refute that he was ever a Purple Heart recipient, or that he didn't deserve them. And you know what was so funny about that was there was a history between these two guys, and both of them had served on those river boats that they had in Vietnam, and this guy, I guess, and they had a debate. I forget who sponsored it or what it was. It was probably on public television, but they had they redid it in that past election year, and this guy, Kerry just destroyed him in the debate. I forget what the debate was about particularly, but it was sort of left and right, I guess. But anyway, they got these people together and they demeaned Kerry. Now, I have no particular love for Kerry. I think he's probably the first smart guy. He married a real rich woman, but he, of course, was pretty well-to-do in his own right. But getting back to the present situation with our President Obama, no matter who's president, we owe him respect. And I don't see this happening. I see all this stuff come through. One thing these people seem to be intent upon doing is proving that, first of all, he is not a citizen. Well, that's been disproved over and over again, and it's a bad, it's a forged birth notice, and it was in the paper. Now you can't go back and change it. We don't have time travel, so you can't go back and change the newspaper. And the other one is that he is a Muslim. Now, these people are convinced that he is a Muslim. Now, he was born to his father, who was in the Hawaiian Islands on a scholarship. It was sponsored by the government. He came from some place in Central Africa, Lagos or some place I'd never heard of. And he ended up getting this is Obama's father, a PhD from Harvard. And he went back to Africa to do what he could in his country, apparently. I don't know this is for a fact, but this is apparently what happened. And then, of course, Obama's mother, who was white, and whose parents, white parents from Nebraska originally, farmer people, originally, they approved of the marriage. They approved of the guy because he apparently was pretty impressive in his own way. But he went back, and of course they got divorced, and she stayed in Hawaii, and then she met another fellow that was there from Indonesia, and he was there and going to school at the same time that she was. This is Obama's mother, and so they got together, and he went back to whatever Indonesian island, I don't know whether it's Borneo or they used to call these the Spice Islands at one time. But anyway, he went back to try and do things there. And, of course, it was a very corrupt government, and I guess he got disillusioned and disheartened and hard to live with. And Obama's mother apparently says that it was a problem there was the have and have-nots, and of course the Americans in there that were supposed to be monitoring things or had an embassy there, whatever. They looked down on the natives. You know, they were woks or gooks or something. But anyway, that marriage disintegrated for practically the same reason, because this guy had gone back the island, she went with him, and it was a disaster. So apparently, and he was virtually raised by his grandparents, his mother's family, and spent a lot of his years with them, and they were Methodists. Now, I don't know whether he ever was a Methodist or not, but he certainly, there's records to prove that he belonged to some sort of a Protestant church here in the United States and practiced his religion as far as we know. So why people are intent on demeaning people, I don't know. But this is nothing new. Abraham Lincoln was so torn to pieces by the newspaper in his day. They portrayed him as an ape or an illiterate and all sorts of things. So it's nothing new. Politics is a dirty business, unfortunately. Sometimes we need a guy that's without the intellect. You know. Oh, that's another thing. They have called in question the academic stature of our President Obama. And, of course, he was the head of the Harvard Law Review. I think he graduated #1 in his law class. I'm not sure, but he was really up there, if not. Because being a head of the Harvard Law Review is a big thing. If memory serves me correct, I believe Bill Clinton just had the same honor at Yale Law School. I don't know. Well, enough for that part of stuff. Let's get into something a little lighter. I watched an old movie yesterday, and it had Jackie Coogan in. Now, I know most of you people don't know who Jackie Coogan was. Jackie Coogan was in the first full-length movie that Charlie Chaplin made. It was called The Kid. And, of course, he was, I don't know, 5, 6 years old probably when that was so he was closer to 7, I guess. Anyway, Jackie Coogan was the best-paid child actor of all times. Now, you got to remember, this is the late teens and early 1920s, and he had earnings in excess of $4 million. And unfortunately, his mother and his stepfather managed to get rid of all but about $200,000 or $250,000 of this money, so that when Jackie came to collect the money, there wasn't any. Finally, I think he got a settlement of half of the $250 that was apparently still left. And as a result of this, they passed what's called the Coogan Act, where these parents of these kids have to account for all the money that comes in. And I know that sometimes these child actors were treated very badly, because one time they had a thing on the Turner Classic Movies where they were interviewing a number of these people. And the fellow that played Dennis the Menace, he was his aunt was in charge of him, and I guess she just used to cuff him and curse him and everything else. He said that it was a horrible existence because he, according to her, he didn't do right. Of course, the kid was, I don't know how old he was, but he wasn't very old. But you talk about child labor and the bad stuff. Now, not Jane Withers, I think, on this interview program we're talking about, I think she had positive things to say. She was apparently always treated very well. So there's always exceptions to everything, I guess. Jackie Coogan, when he was, I think it was 1937, he married Betty Grable. Of course, most people, I don't suppose, remember even Betty Grable. She was a big actress, and of course, Jackie turned out in this movie that I was talking about. It's not a movie that would be made today because and there's kind of one of the main characters, Jackie, and this very old Jewish fella. Jackie is Kelly, and this guy's Ginsberg or something, and they have Ginsberg has a junk business, and Jackie helps her make a success out of it, and they become wealthy in the end. But the Jewish character is kind of demeaning, although he's one of the heroes, but it's still kind of demeaning in the role. But now I got off on that. But Jackie Coogan ended up making movies later on, and he was old and fat and bald. And he didn't look like this cute little kid in the silent movies. I was amazed at the acting ability because he was able to portray more than any actor, adult or not. As a kid in this movie, you knew what was going on. There was plenty of dialogue in the movie, which helped, but you knew what was going on because this kid was one fantastic actor. Now, I talk a little bit about longevity. There are places in and I saw this on television. I don't know whether it was PBS or whether it was the History Channel or where it was, but they made scientific studies of there are pockets on the Earth where people live longer than the average. Now, the average male age in the United States now is 76, so I've got him by almost 15 years already. But a little side remark there about myself, and I'm proud of my age. In January, I'll be 91, and I'm proud of my age, and I'm very happy to be in the shape I'm in, and not just physically, but mentally. Now, I do have a lot of problems with names sometimes. But back to longevity, there are these pockets, but what is the common denominator in these places? It's their diet. It's their diet, and another thing is lack of air pollution. One of the places is a Greek island that's, I guess they're starting to get tourists now, but because of their being famous for people living long. But it's their diet. They don't, and they lead a relaxed life. These people sleep late in the morning. They get up and do some work. They have, I guess they have a little breakfast when they get up, which is usually something like goat cheese and something else, and I forget what. But there are no animal fats involved there's no trans fats at all in their diet. Also, they take an afternoon nap, and then they get up, and then in the evening they socialize a lot. Now, this is something that's just kind of weird down here in Florida. I live in a condominium. There's 20 units, and we're in a oblong, elongated circle, whatever you call that, and there's virtually never anybody out and about. I don't know what these people do all day. But other than, I guess, a few of them play golf sometimes, but I just don't know what they do with themselves because I never see a soul out. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago, and it was on Friday, yesterday, and he said he lives in the Meadows, and he says the same thing. And he says also that they apparently they roll up the sidewalks at 9 o'clock. So I don't know. I think that I think the secret to part of the longevity is not only diet but also your mental attitude and activity. I'm obsessive compulsive, and I have an urge to be doing something, which kind of prevents me from taking a nap most of the time because I think it's something I want to do. Okay, enough of that. One of the things I'd like to talk a little bit about is literature and poetry. And talking about literature, I think that probably the best form of literature is a short story, or a long short story, or a short novel, whichever, because it seems to encapsulate enough. If you read the average novel, they're so full of filler, where the guy describes the things. Why does he describe the surroundings so meticulously? I don't think the average person scans a room when they come in with that much thing, because they're thinking about something else and they're having a conversation with somebody else generally. So I love short stories. Probably the two best short story writers that I can think of is yeah, sure, Somerset Maugham and O. Henry. And you know, O. Henry is famous for his twist at the end. It's fantastic. I think I talked one time on this program about Somerset Maugham short stories, and my favorite one is the Verger. And I'm not going to go into the Verger today, I don't think, because I got some other things. If I have time later, I can come back with it. I have dabbled at writing. I have never had anything published. I'm probably too scared to throw it over, do what they call throw it over the transom. I did enter one of my short stories and two poems in a contest some years ago, and I didn't get any honorable mention or anything. It was a national thing, so I didn't get now. Sometime I did write a short novel, and then I screwed up and I lost the manuscript, and so I don't want to rewrite it because I'm too lazy. It's one of the problems with my writing is I'm a lazy writer. The only thing I've written recently was yesterday. I saw it was a title of a book called A Fistful of Rain, and I thought, I love that phrase, a fistful of rain. And this reminds me of a poem that's in E.E. Cummings, and the reason I'm familiar with this is because it was brought out in the movie, Woody Allen's movie, Hannah and Her Sisters. And the line is, at the end of this poem is, no one has such little hands except maybe the rain. I've asked two ladies who taught at a college level literature what the heck that meant, and neither one of them could come up. One came up with a real metaphysical thing. It was too deep for me to even comprehend. The other one said she didn't know what it meant either. So I don't know. I like poetry, not all of it, because some of it I frankly don't understand. I am particularly fond of Edna St. Vincent Millay's writings. I really had intended to bring, I cannot memorize writings. It's funny that I could remember lines when I was acting, but I can't remember poetry worth a darn. Some people can just rattle it off, and I know very, very little poetry. It's in my mind. Another program I watched on one of the television channels, and I do a lot of reading too, I got to tell you that, but I do watch some television, and I try to be selective. And I saw one on the American Musical, and of course this goes back to minstrel show days. And believe it or not, I think it was in 1950 58, I believe it was, they were still doing minstrel shows. This is where white people black up and pretend that they put black makeup on and they pretend that they're black people. And surprisingly enough, in some of those days, the black people would put on the black makeup and the white lips to resemble the white, for whatever reason, I don't know. A lot of our entertainment, of course, has come out of the black community and the black music. And well, anyway, back to this program that I watched. It kind of traced the history of the Broadway musicals, and of course, there were a lot of musicals that were. The music is written by Rodgers and Hart, and these are very familiar, and you've seen them in a lot of movies, especially Fred Astaire movies and this sort of thing. Cole Porter was a graduate of Yale. He's from a wealthy family. He had more money than he knew what to do with. But he made a ton of money from his music. He wrote not only the music, but the lyrics as well. And his lyrics are extremely clever. You're the tops, and of course, most people remember Night and Day, which reminds me of another interesting composer, and that is Hoagy Carmichael. You've seen Hoagy Carmichael in a number of movies. I think the last one I've seen him in was that movie was made in 1945, right at the end of the war, with about the best years of our lives, about the guys coming back from the service. And here again, it's interesting because there's a guy in there with a double amputee that has these hooky things for hands. And he can do just about anything with them, dial a telephone. Of course, they dialed telephones in those days. And he can light a cigarette. He can do all sorts of things. But one right-wing person, after I asked him, I said, "Did you like that movie?" "Oh, no, I didn't like it." And I said, "Well, what did you think about Harold Russell?" "Well, those weren't real." Well, of course they were. The guy was a WMT from the World War II. He was on a naval boat, and there was some kind of an explosion. I don't think it was would be, I guess, friendly fire, because it was something that was instituted by ourselves, not the enemy. But be that as it may, everybody wants to put a negative spin on things, including me. I have a problem of getting into negativity. The first breakthrough in most of these musicals that were made during the 30s are nonsensical, but first breakthrough was actually in 1927 when Showboat came out. Showboat's a very interesting thing because Oscar Hammerstein wrote the lyrics for it, and Jerome Kern wrote the music, and they tackle racial issues in there, miscegenation, the blacks being treated, in a very demeaning manner. Whereas they directly attack social issues. The original show was very long, and not just in length of the show itself, but also the span of time that it went to. It from the young couple to be people with grown daughter. Not to get into the show in too much depth, but it was the first one that actually told a story, both in the lyrics and the dialogue. It was a great breakthrough, and it wasn't again until Oklahoma in 1943, I think it was, came out and told the story. Oklahoma is based on a story called Green Grow the Lilacs, which is interesting. The word gringo comes from that. The Mexicans, when the American Army went down in there, and they were singing Green Grow the Lilacs, and so that became gringo. These people were the gringos. So you know that. Now, I'm sure you all are holding your breath to hear that fine piece of trivia. The best version of Showboat, incidentally, is done on live stage and then televised. And it was the Paper Mill Playhouse in New Jersey, which is a professional cast. It sticks the longest to the closest to the original play in aging the people and so forth. In the movie version, the little girl never grows up. She doesn't get before much more than 8 or 10 or whatever. Again, I suppose I'm talking about things that just interest me and some of us old fogies. Maybe not. I don't know. When I get started on like literature and so forth, I'm going to briefly tell you, and I may have done this already on the show previously because it's my favorite Somerset Maugham short story. Incidentally, Cole Porter was gay. He was married for many years to the same woman. It was just a thing to, I don't know why he was married to her, but it was not a marriage. In fact, it was just a convenience. I guess they liked each other and hung around each other all the time. But and Somerset Maugham also was gay, for what that may be. Somerset Maugham's the story about the Verger. I love this story, and I suspect that he picked this up from folklore somewhere. And for those of you who are not familiar with Somerset Maugham, many of his short stories and also novels became major motion pictures. And the Verger is a short story, and it appears in a thing that has 4 of his short stories in a movie, a major movie, called The Quartet. And the Verger, this guy's name is Edward Albert Foreman, and he's the Verger at St. Mark's in London. Verger is a guy that's sort of a cross between a janitor and an assistant, like we use the Catholics would use an altar boy. In other words, he robes for baptisms and things like that. Well, he'd been there for 20-some years, and they get a new pastor. And the new guy calls him in, and he said, Mr. Foreman, he said, I see that you're illiterate. And he said, yes, sir, that's so. He said, well, we can see that you get an education to get literate so that you can keep your job here at this high-class church. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't take to that sort of thing. I don't think I'd be interested. And the guy said, well, you'll have to go then. He said, okay, I'll go. So on the way home, he's pretty fussed up about losing this job, which he loved. And he decides he's not a regular smoker or drinker, but he decides that maybe having a cigarette would calm his nerves. So he goes looking for a shop to sell cigarettes, and he can't find one. And this is a big, long street he's on, and he goes up down the street, and he can't find a place to buy smoke. So he goes home, and he talks to his wife, and they'd saved some money over the years. And so they decide to invest in and open a tobacco shop on that big, long street. I'm capsulizing the story, of course. And the upshot of this is that the smoke shop is a big success. And the guy ends up owning a chain of shops all over London, smoke shops. And one day he goes into the bank, and the banker said, Mr. Foreman, you've got a great deal of money on deposit here. He said, we have a trust department, and they could help you with investments that would make you more money than these just bank deposits. And he said, no, I wouldn't be interested in it. He said, well, take these papers home and read them over and before you really make up your mind. And he said, well, that wouldn't do me any good. And he said, well, why not? He said, because I can't read or write. The guy says, my goodness, you can't read or write? What would you have been? You were so successful. What would you have been if you had education? And he said, well, that's an answer. That's easy. I'd be the Verger at St. Mark's. Hey, thank you all for listening this afternoon. I just had a good time. I hope you enjoyed some of it at least. And again, don't believe everything you hear on email because there's so much falsehood there. It's just terrible. Read about Barack Obama. Get his biography and read it, and you get to know him. If you want to do it, do it. I don't know if Romney's got one or not, but you could probably look up all you want to know about him on the internet. And whatever your politics are, get out there and vote. I know I am, even though my wife's going to cancel me out. But that's part of life. Nobody's perfect. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Be sure to hop on over to the Spiritual Broadcast Network. It's the go-to place for all things spiritual. You'll discover internet television shows that you won't find anywhere else. You can also choose from hundreds of hours of spiritual documentaries and movies. You'll enjoy on-demand and live internet television programming 24/7. Best of all, we add new dramas, comedies, talk, and reality shows and more on a daily basis. So why spend countless hours searching the web when you can quickly find just what you want on the Spiritual Broadcast Network?